over to you now.
Well, thank you so much, Melissa, and really thank you to Dana for all the amazing work that you do. I'll just kind of start off by saying, you're absolutely right. Melissa kind of really nailed it. I have really been honored to partner with our nonprofits in a variety of different ways. One of the things that we found, and it was sort of the precipitous behind really sort of deciding that we needed to do something, was mid-pandemic. The CARES Act was a phenomenal, very robust bill that was really targeted toward ensuring that people were not only going to survive the pandemic, but come through it and thrive. And what it did was it offered individuals who had a 401k or a retirement vehicle of some kind to withdraw up to $100,000 if they were directly impacted by the pandemic. Unfortunately, that meant you had to have a 401k available to you. It meant that you had to have some type of money if you were going to be able to tap into that resource. And for so many of our nonprofits, you all were showing up. You were there for our communities and helping us to sort of make ends meet, and yet didn't have this available. And not because you don't have amazing boards and people that are dedicated to you as individuals and to the mission of the work that you do, but truly because it's not easy to do. It's cost prohibitive. It is, it's just very, very challenging. And so we decided to start putting together a really robust piece of legislation that would develop Delaware EARNS. And the amazing thing is we have Ted Griffith with us. Ted, we were able to hire he's our program director for Delaware EARNS. He is our champion. He's ensuring that we get this done right. Go ahead, Ted. So here's Ted. Ted's our champion. I mean, so it's one thing to kind of pass that legislation. It's another thing to get someone in place who's a real passionate, purpose-driven person. And so really happy to have Ted with us. I think I do have a few other folks on my team that are on, and I just want to give a quick shout out to them as well. I saw Carl Konevsky on. He's our communications director. Carl's a rock star and definitely knows what it's like to be the husband of someone who's running a nonprofit, and just how challenging life can be. And I'm not sure if I have anyone else on, but these two are phenomenal members of my team among a handful of really amazing people. So my apologies. We'll jump right in.
Great.
Here we go. So we do have a retirement crisis that we're facing here in not only in Delaware, but really and truly across the US. And as I mentioned, this is really why we're doing this. And Ted, I think that this is where I'm turning this over to you to sort of start to steer and talk about, and he's going to start with this first question, and I'm going to just mute myself, and I'm here to answer questions should we have them, as Melissa mentioned, if they pop up in the chat box and that sort of thing.
Great. Treasurer Davis, thank you so much, and thank you to Dana for this opportunity. We're grateful and appreciate everyone taking this time on a Friday morning. So as we mentioned, we just want to kick it off with a quick question that I think helps crystallize for us what the problem is that we're facing. One of the problems related to retirement. And so just a simple question, and you can take a guess. How many of today's 65-year-olds will live past age 90? Is it 1 in every 10, 1 in every 5, 1 in every 3? And if you just, it's not a formal poll, but if you just want to throw your guess into the chat, might be interesting. And then I'll tell you the answer and how it connects with this problem that we're trying to address. And I don't know, Melissa, obviously not a formal way to poll it, but if there's any predominant answer, be curious to hear it.
Looks like it's a tie right now between 1 in 3 and 1 in 5.
All right, well, you guys are on your game, because the answer is 1 in every 3. In other words, a third of today's 65-year-olds are going to live past age 90. And where the dilemma comes in is that the average retiree only has enough savings to support themselves for 8 to 10 years. So right there, you can see this enormous gap between how long they're going to live and how long their money is going to last them. And that's why Treasurer Davis really wanted us to try to take action to address this. And just really looking, obviously what I was sharing there was kind of a national statistic, but taking a deeper dive to here in Delaware in terms of the scope of the issue that we want to address. And estimated, as you can see there, approaching 150,000 workers in Delaware do not have a retirement plan at work. And that's almost 40% of our workforce. So it's a very large number of people up and down the state, including, certainly some working for nonprofits. The flip side of that is, if you do have a workplace retirement plan at work, why it is so important is that if that's there, and you probably know this from your own experience, if you have that at work, the money's going in there before you ever see it, you're 15 times more likely to save just by having a plan at work. And that's a statistic from our friends at the AARP, another great nonprofit. So I think that helps kind of both illustrate what the problem is, but then that last line kind of gets to what a solution might be. And this is also really a very important issue, really for everybody, but you could say perhaps especially important for people of color. The median white household has 13 times more wealth than the median black household. And that's from a study that the nonprofit Prosperity Now did. So helping people build wealth through savings won't just help with this retirement gap that we're talking about. Ultimately, if we can get people saving through this state facilitated plan, it'll help close this wealth gap and introduce people to the idea of investing as a way to build wealth over time. So that's another very important component of what we're trying to do with Delaware EARNS. All right, so we would say, given the number of people that don't have retirement savings here in Delaware and nationally, and given the fact that generally speaking, folks are living longer, we are facing a crisis. But I want to be very clear about this, and Treasurer Davis is very, very clear about this. We're in no way trying to blame employers for the lack of access to retirement savings. For some employers, especially the small businesses and the small nonprofits, we realize it's just not practical to offer a 401k that is not at the stage where they could do that, or a 403b that you might be familiar with. So what we believe the solution is for the state to step in where there's this gap, and offer a state facilitated individual retirement account, IRAs, as you probably know them, where workers will be, back to that idea of automatically contributing before you ever see it in your bank. It just automatically goes from your paycheck into the retirement account. And with the state taking the lead, this really takes the burden off of the small nonprofits and the small businesses. And this is something that Treasurer Davis she said she's the one that championed this going back to the beginning of her first term. It takes, as you can see, it takes quite a while, but it was the EARNS Act was signed into law this time last year by Governor Carney in August of 2022. So it's been well thought out to get us to this point. And as Melissa mentioned, we have plenty of time also to develop the implementation. We're anticipating full implementation in 2025, and we'll come back to that. But let me just step back for a moment. So I'm talking about this Delaware EARNS. What exactly is this? So it will be a new retirement savings program for private sector workers who currently do not have access to workplace retirement savings plans. And importantly, for Dana's members, this will include nonprofits. And we see the program offering a number of benefits. As you can see, a pathway to economic security, lets employers offer a competitive benefit at no cost to the employer. So there will be no cost to the employer for participating in the Delaware EARNS program. And at the same time, when it's difficult to attract workers, you'll be able to offer this benefit that keeps you competitive. And then the last bit is kind of what's in it for all of us, and especially the state, is that this is an upstream solution, right? If we can get people to save for their own retirement, to be able to take care of themselves when they're, when they stop working, maybe they're no longer able to work. Obviously, if we're successful in doing that, downstream, that could save the state billions of dollars. So that's one of the reasons why the state is trying to think ahead and advocating for this. And of course, that's good news for everybody. All right, so I've told you, hey, we see a lot of benefits. To me, this is exciting, but I realize, you start talking retirement accounts, IRAs, 403Bs, all the lingo, it can get a little dry. And, here you are on a summer Friday, you're hearing about retirement accounts. So, what's the interest? Why should you focus on this? Why should you care? And this is an illustration of why it's worth getting excited about. The reason these are significant and have the potential to help people, even people that don't have the ability to put away a lot of money, is that steady automatic investing in a retirement account can help you build serious wealth over time. And this is just an example I did with a financial calculator of, if you just contributed, it's over the course of somebody's entire career, admittedly, but if you were just putting away $35 a week at the beginning, when you started working, say 21, and then you went all the way to 65, and you never increased from the $35. And even if your return was, say, a little bit below the long-term average for the US stock market, the power of the compounding of the earnings that you're getting every year, you'd end up with about $900,000 just from that little incremental bit going. So that's that to me is something worth paying attention to and getting excited.
And before you move on, I'm sorry, I was trying to catch a pause. There is a question in the chat box.
Okay, great.
That asks, is it offered as an option to nonprofits that may already have a 403B in place, especially if it helps that nonprofit save on costs?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and I'll be diving into that a little bit further on. But the short answer is that if you have a 403B, and I know many in the audience do, we really encourage you to keep it. Just keep that 403B. And we'll touch on that as to why. But if you had a 403B, you're kind of outside of this world of the Delaware EARNS. And I'll be coming back to that as well. But it's a great question. And this is just another example again about what you can do with these retirement accounts. The one I showed you is the most powerful one, where somebody did it. They were very young and they just kept doing it over the course of their working life. But even for those of us who are, 21 is very much in the rearview mirror. If you're in your 40s and you just start putting away a little bit, you can build up a decent nest egg before you get to 65, even without a lot of contributions. But I think as this example shows, the earlier you get started, the better. And that's why we're really excited about Delaware EARNS and why we want to get the word out. We want to get people participating. And I know for nonprofits, I'm very involved as a volunteer with a nonprofit here in Delaware. I know for many in the nonprofit sector, you've made financial sacrifices to pursue a mission that you really care about and really believe in. But we don't want you to have to sacrifice your retirement security. And that's what we see Delaware EARNS doing. Okay, so we had a great question about some of the details. I want to come back to just spend a little time with you on some specifics about the program. So as Melissa mentioned, we're preparing to launch at the very beginning of 2025, and Delaware employers with 5 or more workers will be required to enroll in the Delaware EARNS program if they don't already offer a retirement plan. Workers will then be able to automatically put money into these accounts through direct payroll contributions. So if a business does not have a retirement plan, say a 403B, a 401k, or something similar, and they have 5 or more employees, they're going to be required to participate in this. It's very important for me to point out that for workers, it's completely voluntary. So the employees can opt out at any time. And the nice thing about these also, as you see there, what we mean by portable is that the employees will be able to take these accounts with them throughout their working lives and then use them when they ultimately get to retirement. And maybe a interesting historical note, what this is going to be built on, the type of account that we'll be using for Delaware workers is the Roth IRA, which our late Senator William Roth was instrumental in creating this. And they're, to the extent an individual retirement account can be exciting, they're kind of interesting because your contributions go in after they've been taxed, but as a result, when you get down the road and you reach that retirement age, say, right around 60, you're able to pull not only your original contributions, but all the growth that happened tax deferred over that long period. You're able to pull that out completely without taxes, federal or state income tax. So back to that example where you saw the person was able to accumulate $900,000. If that's coming out of a Roth IRA, there's no taxes on that. Provided that you meet the other criteria, which is basically you have to be retirement age. So why don't I know I'm kind of throwing a lot at you here. I want to take a pause here and would really welcome in the chat, any questions that you have.
Ted, we do have another question in the chat. So you are probably coming to this. However, will you talk about the options to take an early draw, or are there any requirements on age to withdraw the money?
So the specifics of how the Roth IRA works.
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah, so happy to speak to that. And the reason we're using these accounts is their flexibility. One thing to keep in mind which is not true of what's called the traditional or pre-tax IRA, with a Roth IRA, because the money that you put into it, the money that's automatically coming out of your payroll, is after tax, you can pull out that contribution at any time without penalty or tax, because that's your initial contribution. So you don't have to be any specific age to pull out your initial contribution. But just for an easy example, say you contributed $100 and then that grew to $200. If you're age 40, you can pull out that $100 with no penalty or tax whatsoever. But the $100 that you made, if you did pull that out, you'd be subject to taxes and penalties. The key age when potentially everything, you could make qualified withdrawals and everything, including your contributions and your growth, would be completely tax-free. It's a funny age. It's actually 59 and a half. So I don't know why the IRS picked that age, but 59 and a half. So but so they are flexible accounts. And it's interesting, you know, obviously we want people to use these as long-term retirement vehicles, but if there was an emergency, the holder of a Roth IRA does have the flexibility without any kind of financial bite to withdraw the amount that they originally contributed.
Great. So the next question, must employees live in the state to participate or just be employed by a Delaware organization?
Yeah, and so the way that's going to work is if the work they're doing is in Delaware. So if you lived in Elkton, but you know, so you had somebody living in Elkton, but they worked for Dana in Delaware. Not that you guys obviously have a retirement plan, but in that situation, they would be covered. But if they're not primarily working in Delaware, they wouldn't be covered by this. So it's depending on where they work, not necessarily where their residence is.
Great. Is there an option for an employer to make a contribution to the account on an employee's behalf?
Another great question. And the answer to that is no. And that goes to one of the reasons why we would say, if you have a 403B, which I know many nonprofits do, please keep it. There are certain legal reasons for this, but there's no matching contributions with this by the employer.
Great. Any other questions at this time? Please do feel free to put those in the chat box. But Ed, you've answered all the questions we've collected so far.
Okay, great. And please keep the questions coming. And I'm here for follow-up and want to get these questions answered. Absolutely. Thank you. All right, and this is just coming back to, I know we've touched on this, but it's an important point. If you have a retirement plan in place, and traditionally the 403B, you might have heard of that, you might have that. Traditionally, that has been the retirement savings plan for nonprofits. There were some law changes a while back that now make it possible for a nonprofit, if it wanted to offer a 401k instead. But I think my understanding is, for the most part, nonprofits have just stuck with the 403Bs. There are some technical differences, but for our purposes, they're really very, very similar. And one of the advantages, to be candid, that these plans offer over what we'll be offering is the ability to contribute a very significant amount of money. If you're over 50, for example, you could put almost like $30,000 into one of these accounts, whereas with an IRA, your max contribution is going to be about $7,500. We don't see the lower contribution level as being a big obstacle for Delaware EARNS, because we're trying to serve a population that's, for the most part, going to be low income, and so they wouldn't necessarily have the capacity to contribute, $25,000 to $30,000. But if it's an important advantage for the 403B. And then also there was a great question about the matching. The 403B and the 401ks do offer matching. And this is just a bit, oh, let's back up here for a second. And this is just a bit of I know I mentioned this, but I just want to make sure I was clear on it. So who does the Delaware EARNS law apply to? And it's going to be a Delaware employer that has 5 or more employees and does not offer one of those 403Bs or 401Ks. And then when the time comes, and we'll be doing a lot of communication around this, again, our plan is to do kind of a small pilot involving a small number of businesses and nonprofits next year in 2024. But really the rollout of this is we're anticipating is going to be 2025. So there'll be much more communication on this. But just to keep in the back of your mind, when the time comes, and if you are subject to the EARNS law, meeting that criteria that we talked about, it's very simple. You just register. You'll have a website that's going to be provided by a vendor. You're just going to register, and then you'll enter information, sort of your census of employees. You'll enter that, and then just every time payroll comes along, you'll be remitting the contributions. Again, in this plan, you will not be able to make matching contributions, but we're going to be using, this has already been done. This kind of program that we're talking about has already been done in other states successfully. And so we're going to be relying on the latest technology administrators that have successfully done this elsewhere. So, because we realize that, a potential downside for your nonprofit could be a little bit of administrative hassle. So we're going to make sure we do everything, and I welcome feedback as we get up and running of what we can do better to just make it as seamless and as low maintenance for you as possible. And for many of, if your organizations use somebody to do the payroll provider, it can be fully integrated with that. For employees, it's very, very simple. As I mentioned, for employees, this is completely voluntary. They would be automatically added to it, but they can opt out at any time. They can opt out and then opt back in. There's no restriction there. But if they do want to participate, and for many folks, not everybody, but for many folks, we think it's going to be really beneficial for the reasons that we talked about, for them to participate. And so if you want to participate, you don't have to do anything. You're just going to be automatically going into it, which we think, in a way, what's been shown with retirement savings is if you just do it automatically, again, before you see it, that can really be the most effective way. And then as we discussed, we're preparing kind of for the full launch in 2025, when employers to which this law applies will be required to register and participate. But again, we're committed to, Treasurer Davis is really committed to partnering with our nonprofits, our small businesses, to make this as simple as possible. And we welcome your feedback. And one other thing I should really mention, this is something that Treasurer Davis pushed for in the legislation. We hope to have the ability to provide on a needs basis grants that would help, maybe a very small nonprofit that didn't have the technology or the payroll software to be able to integrate this. We hope to make some state funds available for cases where it would be a burden to have to buy technology to comply with the law. That was something that she really advocated for, which again just goes to the idea of we really want to be your partner in this and make it as easy as possible.
Ted, quick question. How are you defining for this purpose small nonprofits and businesses?
Yeah, and that will be, so it's a great question, Melissa. That'll be something that we'll have to sort of better define through policies. It's in the law that there's the potential to give these grants, but it hasn't yet been defined exactly, how that would, the criteria, but there's so more to come on that.
Okay.
And one other thing that's really important to point out is, obviously, this Delaware EARNS program will be overseen by the Office of the State Treasurer, which has deep expertise in overseeing these types of plans. Of course, the Office of the State Treasurer oversees the retirement plan, it's called the 457 plan for thousands of state workers and state retirees. So deep experience there. And a number of other investment plans that are overseen by our office. In addition to that, in addition to the oversight of the Treasurer's Office, the EARNS program has just a phenomenal board, people with a real range of talents and experiences. So we're thrilled to have them. And our chair, she may look familiar to all of you, Fayetta Blake, who is just a fantastic leader for us. Dana recognizes that she's a fantastic leader because, as you probably know, she's the chair of Dana as well. But anyway, just maybe if you were wondering, like, hey, who's kind of keeping an eye on this whole thing? It's a fantastic board. And just wanted to reinforce again, I'm here, the treasurer's here. We want your feedback as we get ready to launch and then after we launch, because, there's always going to be, we're going to start with, our very best effort, but we recognized over time, as new technology becomes available, we're going to want to make it even better for you. So please, concerns, questions, we want to hear that. Absolutely. And how do you get your questions? How do you submit your questions? I think it's pretty easy to remember. You can always find us through Google or something like that, but just earns@delaware.gov, and that'll come right to me at earns@delaware.gov. And then you can see the little where we have a website, but write to me at any time, and I'll respond, and I'll make sure we do our best to address whatever the issue may be.
So Ted, may I ask a follow-up question?
Absolutely. Good segue, Melissa.
Hi, look, it's like we planned it. So will this result in regulation to outline how the program is implemented?
Yes, one of the things that we will develop, and again, the nice thing about this is we are not inventing the wheel here. There's currently 7 states that have these programs actually up and running. People are saving money, and in some cases, very significant assets have been accumulated. But in those cases, and we'll follow that same model, Melissa, we will be developing regulations that sort of spell out, a number of issues. We do want to include part-time workers, but we don't necessarily want to define it too broadly so that somebody that's just going to be there for a couple of weeks or a summer job kind of gets swept in. So the legislation very wisely that created EARNS set some broad parameters for us, did what it needed to do, but then left it to our great board to formalize regulations that'll go to very specific things. So there's more to come on that.
Wonderful. Well, as you have draft regulation, we'd love for you to come back and present that to us again, so that we can help weigh in on, yes, that's wonderful, or could we see this, because I think that we've had wonderful opportunities in the paid leave space to do that, and it's been very helpful. So we'd love to see that happen again.
Yeah, I welcome that opportunity.
Wonderful. One thing I would ask you to speak to is, and I know this was in the legislation, but I think it might be helpful for this group, is the opt-in versus opt-out.
Sure. So are you referring to the employees or?
Yes.
Yes. So to be clear, the way this will work for workers is if your employer is subject to Delaware EARNS, you would be, and you meet the criteria for employee, you would be automatically enrolled into the EARNS program. In other words, say 5% of your paycheck would be automatically deducted into an IRA for your benefit. So that would happen automatically. However, you can opt out. You just have to go to the website and say, you know what, I just can't do it right now. Opt me out. You just click a button and you're opted out of it. So it's completely voluntary for the employees. The reason why it's automatic is that really reflects, Treasurer Davis wanted to make sure that we were, in thinking about this program, that we were making use of the latest insights into something that's called behavioral economics, which is a fancy word, but really it's a way of kind of looking at things maybe in a kind of a realistic way of how people actually behave, that they don't necessarily always make the most rational, best interest decision for themselves, sometimes purely out of inertia. And what's found is if you just automatically enroll somebody, you get them going into it, they're going to recognize the benefit down the road. But if you created like a hurdle and made the individual employee enroll in it, they wouldn't get around to doing it. And so that's why it's automatic enrollment, but the opt-out will be very, very easy. Did that speak to?
Yes, it was one of the questions that we got most when the legislation was making its way through the process. So I thought it best to speak to that. So Ted, another question in the chat. Is it 5% of base pay, or does it include variable pay as well, including commissions, bonuses, etc.?
Yeah, and that will be something that we'll clarify in the regulations, but it would be 5% of the total comp in that paycheck. Yes, is what we're anticipating, but we'll that's not definitely decided.
Okay, and then is there a way to adjust the percentage?
Yes, yeah, there will be a way you can adjust it at any time. So you don't have to stop participating, but the way it's working in other states, and we will follow this example. Absolutely, you can change the, if you set it to 0, obviously you wouldn't be participating, but anything.
So a follow-up to that, is the 5%, is the plan for the 5% to become the default, or what is the default investment percentage?
And again, we have not settled on that definitively, but what's the fact that we're able to benefit from the experience of what's been done in other states. I believe Oregon sort of was the first, the sort of pioneer in this. It goes all the way back to 2017. What's been found is 5% is kind of the sweet spot, that it's not so much that somebody's like, hey, what are you doing to me? I can't do it. But it's not so small that it doesn't really, really benefit them down the road. So in all likelihood, the default, again, not set in stone yet, but in all likelihood, the default, which again can be changed by the person at any time, would be 5%. Yeah.
So, friends, are there any other questions for Ted or for the team in the state treasurer's office? Oh, I see. I'm sorry. There's one more. Will there be default investments?
Oh, really great question. Yeah, and I'm sorry, I should have spoken to that. Yes, the way this works in other states is so you don't make it complicated for people to pick out their own investment. Folks may be familiar with the idea of the target retirement fund, where it's a mutual fund that holds a mix of stocks and bonds that's just appropriate to whatever your age is. So many places, again, that's a sort of a best practice now. You get defaulted into the target retirement fund based on when you would be 65 years old. So that's going to be the lead item. There'll be some at least one other option where you could just keep the money in kind of a cash savings account if you wanted to do that. But yeah, we're going to lead with the default target retirement fund.
Any other questions? Okay. Ted, you don't happen to have any singing or dancing you'd like to do today with a captive audience, or no?
We
Thought I'd ask.
We don't want me to sing or dance.
All right. Well, I like that Laurie came back on camera to laugh. So that's amazing. Well, I just really want to thank you for coming and sharing your expertise today, and for truly, prioritizing the nonprofit community as you're sharing the components of the program. So thank you so much for that. And we really do appreciate it. And we look forward to you bringing back as you're building out the program and writing the regulations. We'd love to be involved as you have draft components of that regulation, and so that we have an opportunity to weigh in.
Absolutely.
But are there any final questions for Ted before we end a little early? Nobody loves time back onto their calendar than this crowd, Ted. So you just really you nailed it. Well, you're getting tons of thank yous in the chat. So truly, thank you so much for the time today. So if everybody would just join me in giving a big thank you to State Treasurer Davis and to Ted Griffith, who will be running the EARNS program for Delaware. Honestly, we really do appreciate you.
And Melissa, we're just so grateful to Dana for giving us this opportunity, and look forward to continuing. Absolutely. So really, the thanks should go to Dana.
Well, thank you. Now, for all of you who have participated in Dana workshops before, as you well know, we have a little housekeeping to do. So we will be sending out a follow-up survey. So if you would kindly take the time to complete that, I would be ever so grateful. A couple of quick announcements while I have you clearly captive. We are launching an accelerator program, which is very exciting for Dana. And we are holding some workshops, information session workshops, in the next week. So we just sent out our newsletter, so you'll be getting that very, very soon, but they are being held on August 9th and August 14th. So if you would like to learn more about our new accelerator program, which is to be launching forthcoming, those are your opportunities to get all of the information that you will need to know about what would make you eligible, what the program components are. So please do take a moment to register and come and learn more about that program. Huge benefits for nonprofit organizations. So I definitely want to see folks take advantage of that. And then we do have our member meet and greets coming up in the next couple of months in Kent and Sussex County. So please do take a moment and check our event calendar, because we'd love to see you in person for a little mini golf and ice cream and coffee and donuts. So please come out and visit us. I'm far more fun in person, I promise you. So do check our event calendar, because we have events to learn more about the EARNS program, but also we have a number of wonderful programs that we really do want to create an environment where you can get the information you need to do your job better. So please do check out those things on our calendar. Jen, did you have anything to add today?
Hi, everyone. Melissa, you killed it. I know I sent you a message about how amazing you are hosting today, so thank you for that. I did put in our events calendar, the link for the events calendar in the chat. So if anyone wants to check us out, hit any of our accelerator workshops, or if you want to come to our meet and greets, you can do all of that at the link in the chat. So thank you guys so much. I'm so excited that you are all here today.
Great. Well, thank you all. Enjoy your, 40 minutes that you get back onto your calendar. I won't tell if you just leave this on your calendar and go do other things. So thank you again, Ted, and everybody enjoy a wonderful weekend.